Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. As a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, Chair of the Town of Nantucket's Finance Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative, and starting with Peter Schaefer.
Aye.
George Harrington.
Aye.
Jill Veith.
Aye.
Chris Glowacki.
Aye.
Stephen Morey.
Aye.
Joanna Roche.
Aye.
Nodding her head aye. Okay. And we know Joe Grouse.
Aye. Sorry, I
Okay.
took a bad time to run around the corner. Sorry.
That's no problem. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative, and starting with, let's see, who do I see first? Libby Gibson.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
Terry Norton. Terry, I know you're there because you're.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. I was
Thank you.
doing something else.
That's all right. And for people who are going to be on the agenda, I'm going to start with, I can see Tom Rafter.
Here.
Thank you, Tom. Chief Pittman,
I'm here.
Chief Murphy,
Here, thank you.
Rick Sears. Rick, I've missed you in the last
Here.
checking. Mark Willett.
Here.
Thank you. And Chief Gibson.
Here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, it's convening by video conference and Zoom app is posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials are on the town's website. First item on the agenda, we're going to do the usual ground rules, which is I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will ask the committee if they have any questions, comments, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. And please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. May I have an approval of the agenda, please?
Move approval.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. By roll call, Peter,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, I. That passes unanimously. I will open the floor to public comment. And if there's any public comment, please put up your little electronic hand. Okay, and I will be closing the public comment. All right. So now we'll go on to agenda item number 5, which is review and discussion of the 2023 budgets for the folks that are on the Zoom meeting today. And Brian, I'll actually turn it over to you at this point. Thank you.
You're welcome, Madam Chair. Thank you. I think that the expectation was we would keep them in the same order as anticipated on Saturday. So the order would be police, fire, water, airport, and then sewer.
Right.
I think we left off with just after the police chief had finished his presentation and comments on the fiscal 23 operating budget. So I think at this point we are at the question portion from the FinCom, if I remember correctly. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
Yes, Brian, we got just to that point when everybody started dropping off into the snowmageddon. So Joanna and Chris, you have the lead on this for the police. So I'll start with the two of you, and then we'll see if there's any other questions from the rest of the committee. So up to either one of you who wants to go first, but Chris is unmuted, so he wins. There you go.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a lot because I thought the chief's comments were pretty thorough in terms of the presentation. It answered a lot of my questions. But I was curious about the two police officer positions, those are incremental to the open positions, chief?
They are. That would
It-
take our authorized strength up to 43.
And is that the right number, or is that the number you think you might be able to find and hire, or is that the number you think you can get the budget for?
Well, that's a tough question. I'm not sure. I mean, as far as finding and hiring, I'm not sure about that. That number came about because I believe it's a number we need to more regularly guarantee the staffing at the airport, which typically takes 2 officers to do. That's the one position right now that's kind of becoming the victim of the short staff.
The reason I asked the question was, I guess I would have thought, reading through the presentation, listening to your comments about the impacts of police reform and other things, that even your core team outside of those additional responsibilities probably needed more people.
Yeah, I mean, we could always use more people, but again, finding them is another problem right now.
Yeah, so it's not that you felt constrained necessarily by budget to get more people, but just a realistic expectation of who you might recruit in this fiscal year.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And I guess same question on lifeguards. I really appreciated your comments about how, the South Shore has become one long beach, it seems to me, during the summer from Cisco to Matacasham. And the notion of these, protected town areas isn't what it used to be. And I was curious if you had data on the number of rescues the team performs outside of kind of their core surveillance area when, as you mentioned, they have to jump on the ATV and run down the beach.
Yeah, well, we have an absolute number on that. I can't give it to you at the moment because I don't have it in front of me, but I will make sure that you can get it.
Yeah, I mean, it don't go to a lot of effort on, just more curiosity as to whether that's a bigger number than the number that, kind of in their core area or smaller. I assume that number's been growing over time.
Well, if you took the combination of all the lifeguarded beaches, the town beaches, and added those up, those rescues would certainly be more in number than the ones we get on outside areas. And the big difference is within the guarded beaches, the rescues are made after the lifeguard observes a problem, where in the unguarded areas, the rescues are made when a phone call is made to dispatch and 911 reporting a problem. So just by that nature of that response, it's going to be a lot fewer, but it's a significant number nonetheless.
And so I guess, same question here. I think you said 5 additional lifeguards. Are we mainly constrained by housing and recruiting in terms of getting?
Housing's a big issue there, but also that's the number of lifeguards it takes to staff a post, so to speak.
Okay.
So we're only proposing opening up one more post down in that area.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. And then all my questions are along the line. It's all of us in every business out here. It's all just people and how you find them and how you get them. I was curious. I think you said in your comments that detectives is one of the areas that you've got one of your biggest recruiting challenges now, or most openings. And just curious, given that everything I know about detectives comes from TV and therefore probably isn't very accurate, what the impact is there, or the risk, or what do you lose? What do we lose as a community when you don't have the detective resource you need?
Well, that having detectives is very instrumental in being able to solve crimes, especially complex crimes such as sexual assaults, potential drug overdoses that may potentially result in a manslaughter charge. Different complex investigations like that, you really need the attention of a detective who has both the training and the time to dedicate towards the follow-up that's required for those cases. You can't depend on a street patrol officer who's constantly interrupted by calls for service to do those follow-ups. That might work for some property crimes, but it doesn't work for investigations like sexual assaults and death investigations.
Thanks. Those are my questions, Joanna.
Hi there. How are you tonight? I have a couple of questions, Chief. The first one, I'm just going to flip back to my screen here. The first one is about the business license inspector. Now, didn't we, correct me if I'm wrong, have an assistant a few years back? So is this like a promotion from the assistant to the business license inspector, or an additional business license inspector, and you're still going to have the assistant?
We've had a series of reorganizations in the business licensing section. For instance, when that program first started, it was in the town manager's office. There was one person that was over there. That person retired. The replacement was hired by our department, who then assumed the role of the business licensing. We went through, I think, at least one other individual before we got to Amy. Now, Amy brings a tremendous amount of skills to the table, and she was able to organize the licensing process to incorporate the permit sales that go along with that, and to streamline the whole process. And so we hired another permit. Well, she was considered an inspector, Ann Cimitaro, but in the reality, majority of her job duties, she ended up being kind of the processing of the applications and the issuing of the permits and stuff. She never really got a chance to go out and actually do inspections. But then our permit salesperson, Catherine Tovey, resigned, and Ann Cimitaro took her place. Now, we've reorganized our permitting section, records section, fiscal section of the department to do with fewer people. And in the process of doing that, they've become more tied, every one of them, to the actual license issuing issues. Nobody except for Amy has any chance to really go out and actually do any on-site inspections. And she's actually challenged in time to be able to do that. So that's what we want to be able to supplement, is somebody who can actually go out and actually regularly inspect, and more importantly, help the owners be in compliance. It's not to catch them doing wrong, it's to help them do the right thing by showing them and working with them.
Okay, so I guess so there's a coordinator still, or no?
There's no coordinator.
So there's going to be 2 full-time business license inspectors.
No, right now there is no business license inspector.
There's Amy.
There's
And then-
Amy, that's it.
And that's it. Okay, so there's going to be no coordinator and a business license inspector.
Right, we
Well,
never had a coordinator.
So
That's-
okay, I'm misunderstanding Ann's position then.
Okay, she was an inspector, okay, who ended up being involved, and people come into her.
Right.
She would put the applications together, make sure they had all the right stuff, like they had to get different reports, they had to get fingerprinted, they had to get photographed, they had, the mechanical process of putting together an application. And then Amy works on the back half of the application, the more the approval process, actually reviewing the different things that you have to get, like the criminal reports, the background investigation, the references, things like that, and then preparing it for the select board's actions. So Ann ended up moving to be in just permit sales, leaving a vacancy down there, or a hole down there necessarily. And we're going to fill that with another admin person we have here. We're going to supplement that with Marina, and then Marina Devonich, who is a special events coordinator. Okay. Marina, that's where the coordinator word comes from. I totally missed that. Marina will then fill that role down there that Ann used to be in, and then an inspector will be out in the field actually following up on things.
Got it. Thank you. I was worried that there was going to be one less person to help, and I was curious about the paperwork, right? So you've just answered that question.
Sorry about that. I totally missed Marina in that.
Okay. Okay. The second part of my question has to do with the marine, no, the renovation and construction of the harbor master building. So that supplemental funding is coming out. So it's getting added into this year, even though, is this what we voted on last year at the town meeting, the additional money, and it's just going in now? Is that, no, this is additional money.
Yeah, it's additional money because the bids came in way over the estimate on the project.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much.
Can I
Thanks,
ask a follow-up to that, Denise?
Sure. Go ahead, Chris.
Chief, what does that put that building on for a schedule then, if assuming it's appropriate at town meeting?
I will defer that question to Deputy Chief Gibson. He's the project manager.
Hopefully, if it passes town meeting and the ballot, we would be able to put it back out for bid, probably for maybe late August. And hopefully we could get started with construction or demolition in the fall. And then that would move through 2023. That's the best case. We're ready to go out to bid again. Just basically the dollars.
Are the plans changed, or has there been any update? I know the select board gets some comments from the public sometime about whether there's enough coastal resiliency built into those plans.
We were in front of coastal resiliency before coastal resiliency was a thing. The building already is in what they call a velocity zone, which is VE 11, which is a FEMA standard, 11 feet above high tide. So we probably 6 years now went to the State Board of Appeals, Building Board of Appeals, to get the building lowered, because it would have had to be another 6 feet higher than it is now. So not to have the building basically on stilts down there to comply with the building codes, we were able to use an innovative foundation that's basically allows stormwaters to pass sort of through the foundation and still maintain its structural stability. We've had that under design for probably 5-6 years now, and it's just a matter of getting the funding to make it work.
Thank you.
So just one more question about that. Thanks, Charlie. So what is the additional expense of this building beyond what we originally voted on? Is it $4 million now?
Yeah, the bids came in at $6 million. That was the high. We thought it would be somewhere around 3, and this is where we're. Every project, as everyone knows, the prices for building materials have skyrocketed, and public sectors even more. We hope we have enough now, but nothing has stayed the same even since we went back to FinCom to the extra money. So hopefully we'll find some contractor that needs some work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope so. Okay, that's all I have.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Denise is attending to her 4-legged friends and her house, and she's asked me to take over just for a minute. So I think that concludes public safety, Chief, unless you had any closing remarks for us.
No, the only thing I would add is this winter storm this weekend was an example of why we need to get that harbor master building replaced. We did have flood waters go through the building again, and we are very doubtful that we're going to be able to open up bathrooms and showers in that structure this summer. We're exploring getting portable facilities down there for the summer. The floor structure and the structure of the building is significantly compromised, and doing repairs is beyond the ability of what we can put into that building at this point. And this flood, which was a foot up in the building itself, was an example why we got to get this done. So appreciate your comments and support.
Wow. And if you could share a brief update on what's the status of the town pier itself.
Well, that's actually not as bad as what a lot of people think. That there was a couple of sections, about 20 foot of decking that was dislodged down on the end of the pier. And then there was numerous planks all along the pier that were knocked loose from the waves coming up under them and pounding it. And so it's not safe to be on now, but we fully expect it'll be able to be easily put back together. Probably the most expensive part will be replacing those big, huge planks that are out on the end of the pier, just because you have to have a company like AGM or Mohawk or one of them come in and do it with the equipment they have. But we don't think it'll probably cost more than about $15,000 or $20,000 worth of damage. To
Okay,
it.
and the
Biggest risk is future storms between now and the summer for creating more damage.
right, but otherwise, barring another storm, you think we could have it back in order? by-
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah. Great, okay, well, thank you. If somebody could help me out, Brian, maybe with the agenda, what's the next department we have up here?
Fire.
Fire,
Yes.
thank you,
As Maria said, it would be Chief Murphy and the fire department.
great. Thank you, Chief Murphy, over to you.
Afternoon, all. Thank you. Go through a little bit of the presentation from the online, go right to the goals that we've had. And it's kind of continuation of goals that I've been trying to strive on, with professional development being up at the forefront. We were able to do some training this past year. The pandemic shut down much of the training for a long period of time and really limited class participation sizes, which hurts people enrolling. But over the past 6-8 months, we've had a lot of people in different classes, either with Mass Fire Academy or specialized in applications going out to classes at the National Fire Academy as well. So hopefully we'll get some return on those. We've had training here at the station, which would include confined space training. A couple of years ago, we did trench rescue training, and we've had members going away for classes from the Mass Fire Academy for rope rescue training. Now, why would we need something like that? It comes down for everything as to the amount of work that's being done. Just think of the sewer project and how deep they were digging those trenches. Those are very technical rescues. If anything, God forbid, would happen and cause an issue, that we would be the ones called upon to affect the rescue. And having people who are capable, and hopefully someday with the right equipment, to be able to affect rescues safely is important. And then even to the point, if you wanted to look at any basement rescue that may be, if it's a new basement, how do you get people in and out of those? And a lot of those involve a lot of rope and a lot of very technical rescues. The last goal we're talking about would be with DCR, the town-wide wildfire protection plan. We're just about ready to roll that out. I got to talk to some of our partners in the land bank, conservation, and the trust to make sure that we're able to work effectively together in order to have this plan be as successful as it can be. We can go on to initiatives. So advanced life support, again, a recurring theme, but I'm happy to say that one of our things we did have over this past year, at the very end of last fiscal year and through this first 7 months of the current fiscal year, is we are an ALS department. We have paramedics that provide that level of care on the ambulance, and it's been a big difference in what somebody receives in the back of that ambulance or at their home, the level of care and services that are provided. To a little bit of a financial aid, a financial side too, that also meant we were able to bill higher on some of our ambulances, so that revenue, it'd be curious to see over the course of a year, we're averaging about 25 to 30% right now on ALS calls, so that there'll be a difference in that income in that ambulance reserve fund. Call department, that's been a very difficult thing to keep going. We're trying to revamp some of the orientation of people coming in the door. And the deputy chief, Sean Mitchell, who was just appointed back in July, has been working with the Mass Fire Academy and their call vault training department in order to provide the training to our new members here through online, and then having our own personnel take and do the practical training. And then again, I can't say enough about professional development to continue that through and get people trained. There's nothing worse in this profession, complacency, thinking you know it all, because it'll kill you faster than anything else. Priorities continue to grow ALS. Currently, we have 5 members in a paramedic class that's running 3 days a week. They have about right around 2 months left of their didactic or their classroom training. Then they'll go into hospital time and clinicals and then field internships. And we should see those testing of those paramedics coming out somewhere probably around August or September, where we can add them to our paramedics on the trucks after they finish their orientation. Again, professional development. This is one of the things I try to take and be very aggressive with the members and give them the opportunities and know that they have the chances to attend this training. It gets very hard on a lot of people to attend the training with everybody's outside professional lives or personal lives, I should say. So we still try. And then the lastly is to develop with the union to address health and well-being of our members through physicals and through specific for firefighters and mental health and safety for them as well. So just a little overview, and some of these numbers are really surprising to me when I started looking over them. One division of the fire department is fire prevention. We have a fire prevention clerk. We have 2 fire prevention officers. One fire prevention officer is charged with mostly commercial. The other is charged with residential and public outreach. With the real estate boom, for the lack of a better word, and all the transfers, every house that is sold, for the most part, has to have a fire alarm inspection. The average numbers of those have gone up about 250%. We have gone from, as it says here in FY20 at 290 to 758 and 21. 22 numbers we're still, working at, but it's kind of mellowed out, but it's still going really strong. Part of that change is where it used to be before that if a monitor system a report was given, we would just issue the certificate. Now we're actually going out and inspecting because of issues we've had. So there is some bump to that, as well as the bylaw that we're enforcing for oil tanks and on property transfers. Any oil tank has to be changed out to a double wall tank. So in the future, through attrition, we'll have every oil tank on this island will be double wall contained, and the likelihood of spills will be greatly reduced. Our calls for fires have been about the same. We've been right about average with that. And then our overall calls are up for fire alarms. And I attribute a lot of that reason to short-term rentals and a lot of people coming here over the pandemic that would normally go out to eat and were trying to eat and cook for themselves in their own home and failed miserably to the start, and we're setting off their smoke detectors quite often. So that was a thing. We were out for those a lot. And then for our EMS services, we've been consistent over the previous years with the number of calls we've been doing. We can go on to the next section. I'm gonna hit the high points on this with the budget.
Actually, Chief, you could just go straight to the exception page. 'Cause
Well,
we've
I was
all-
gonna go right to the
Yeah, please.
FY23.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. So what we're looking for in the asks, part-time administrative assistant. This is making our part-time administration assistant going to full-time. The demands of that department and that division, I should say, are greatly increased, and the need for this position to go full-time is there. Addition of 2 firefighters, paramedics, it's hard to get people. I'm going to piggyback on what the questions you asked, Bill. It's hard. I believe strongly in homegrown, and we have people that are expressing interest in being full-time firefighters, and we'd have to invest in their education to make them such. Hiring somebody off the street who's already a paramedic and has all the skills is dang near impossible. And I believe, I'd refer to Brian, but I believe one of those positions are funded from the ambulance reserve account, and that this would bring all our shifts up to a total of 7 persons on each shift. So that would be a captain and 6 firefighters. Why that's important is staffing levels and keeping an appropriate number on shift working so that we can respond to at least 2 calls. There's points in time we had, for this past weekend, we had 6 people on for Friday and Saturday, and we still didn't have enough people. They were still running out the door in 4 or 5 calls, multiple calls at a time. And then the increase in overtime of $50,000. We took a little reduction in our overtime in this last budget. I asked for this increase so we could support that increase of staffing in order to provide a safe level during the winter and the summer, both for coverage of shifts. The capital requests, this is it might be one last year, I believe, maybe one more year. I apologize for the replacement of the SCBAs, the breathing apparatus for the firefighters, and will be done. The advanced life-saving equipment is to buy equipment to outfit another ambulance. We're working on a 3rd, and this would be our 4th, along with the replacement of the ambulance. Technical rescue equipment was asked for as well. That goes back to that point about rescues and specialized situations. The replacement of the portable radios, I actually withdrew from Capital Committee. We got a grant from FEMA that supported that purchase of those equipment for an excess of $300,000. And we only had a 5% contribution. So I was very, very happy about that. The active shooter response equipment, if anybody saw the news the other day out of California, there was a captain who had a dumpster fire who was killed because he was shot. Now, would this equipment help that? No, but it just goes to show the type of world we're living in and the need for this equipment when we're going into situations that we're not properly protected. The firefighting foam disposal and replacement, that's a number I hope would be enough. Quite honestly, there's nobody who can really even tell me how to clean a truck to get the old foam out so that it's no longer there. And those floorings are still attached to the inside of a tank. But I hope that would be enough to at least get rid of our old foam, clean the tanks, and buy new foam that's PFAS free. The replacement of the utility truck is needed in that it I have a truck right now that's on its last legs that the shift uses. And then the UTV is a vehicle that would be purchased for events and specialized rescue for beach rescues and in woodland areas that we wouldn't be able to get a normal vehicle into. And we already have a trailer that would go into. And then the operational equipment, there is rope rescue equipment in there. And then the alternate gear for firefighters to use when not in a fire. So this would be used on ambulance calls, for technical rescues, for car accidents, where they needed an extra layer of protection in order to make sure they were safe.
Thank you, Chief. Peter and I have the baton for this one. So Peter, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Thanks, Chief. It was pretty good. I just like the police budget. There's not a lot of question. It was really tight, and I was impressed. Couple things. Why are our health insurance costs so low? Is it subsidized through the union? I mean, what causes that?
Ryan?
I guess in reference to what, Peter?
Well, wait, it's about $1,000, not even $1,000 a person on this budget, unless I'm reading it wrong.
Are you looking at the
Health insurance and Medicare, the the budget is $34,000 for 2023.
Well, Medicare is only the taxes. It's got nothing to do with the
Right.
health insurance. The health insurance itself for the general fund is in a separate budget item, and it's about $14 million for the entire town. So
Okay, so it's
that
basically,
line item is payroll tax related, not actual health insurance related.
it's not allocated to each division, it's just total tax, total town.
The health insurance itself, correct. But
Okay,
the payroll taxes are allocated to each department.
okay, understood. Question, when we buy new equipment, the number that you have on here, is that net of disposing of the old equipment?
No, the trucks that I'm doing recently is the trucks will be then auctioned as surplus or put out for bid as surplus property
Okay, and whatever we got would go back to the
back in
town?
the general fund. Yep.
Okay. What do you, this is just an unusual question perhaps. What are you finding now with the new house, all these new big houses being built? Is it putting you at a disadvantage, the size of them, positioning or how they're being built different than it was, let's say 10 years ago?
Yes to all, and probably even more. So we've had to take and come up with different strategies. A lot of these houses being built are commercial size. When you start looking at the square footage, how they're constructed with lightweight materials and composites, they don't last in the fire as long as. So when you hear a lot of these issues with firefighters dying, it's because they were in an area and the fire burned so hot that there was a collapse because of the structure and because of the materials inside. So how we access, how we run hose, to how many people or how aggressive we are is very much everything in the forefront of my thought of how we operate. Also, my fire prevention officer, Joe Townsend, spoke or was going to speak soon in front of the Builders Association about the addition of home sprinkler systems and how beneficial they would be in taking and handling small fires and protecting the property. So yeah, it very much does. And I don't think of them as a residential fire as much as I think of them as a commercial fire. You know, and sometimes we wouldn't have the people to fight the fires. They're just too large.
Yeah, keep our fingers crossed, I guess. Denise?
Thank you, Peter. Chief, how is your 2022 actuals looking? How is it tracking?
My personnel is fine. My operational is on edge right now. I'm paying attention to it just because of a large purchase I may have to make with the repairs to the ladder truck. But I've been working with Brian and Libby to make sure everybody goes, but we're doing okay.
Okay, thank you. That was it. Your presentation was great and the information was excellent in your storyboard, so I don't have any further questions. Does anyone else on the Finance Committee? Joe?
Thanks, Denise. Hi, Chief. I was just sort of curious. I guess it was 2 years ago, there was a lot of debate, or maybe it was 3 years ago, a lot of debate about moving the fire station to its current location in terms of time, you know, the traffic directions and getting off of Fairgrounds. I don't know. Anyway, my question is, how is operating at the new location turned out, and what are your sort of times to get to various service calls, EMT calls, and so on?
None that I've seen have changed or been any large issue that we've had to address. We actually are very cognizant, and my people are very, very good about not using Newtown Road where it's a residential, if they can go around through the rotary. So with even that, it's not taking and affecting our response times. I can tell you that we're very appreciative of this building and what it offers compared to what we had though.
So no, because it seemed to me that there was some discussion then about having a remote ambulance location in Mattakit, and there were a lot of people who were concerned that this move would mean deteriorating safety for the public, and it sounds like that's not been your experience.
No, that's not the case. We've had studies through WPI suggesting rapid response ambulances downstairs, or letters from public with traffic saying we should stage. I think how we staff right now and how we respond is the best use of our personnel that we can. If we start taking and moving around, and we're taking kind of and minimizing what they can provide. So, but I haven't seen any issues at all.
And just a quick, this year's capital budget looked relatively benign. Do you have any, big apparatus purchases over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years?
So in the next couple of years, I think the ladder truck would be the next big one coming up in a couple of years. That would be the largest purchase of around 1.5 million, depending on how the prices go. But outside of that, that's really everything we have is on a replacement schedule of a couple of years. For the, every 2 years we replace an ambulance. Every 8 years, the administrations were on a pretty good schedule for a replacement policy. It's marched right out that we're never going to have a lot of equipment at one time for an ask.
Great. Thanks so much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions for the chief? In which case, Chief, thank you.
Hey, thank you, everybody, for being so kind. And Libby may gush at this one and Brian may turn his head down, but that was my last one. So thank you very much. And thank you for all your kindness and what you've done for us. So thank
He's
you.
just kidding. He's kidding.
Thank you.
No.
No,
Last
we
one.
didn't. So FinCom has just made a motion that you have to stay forever. So there you go. Is that okay, Libby?
No
Fantastic.
other choice.
Told you, Steve.
Thank you, everybody.
For that motion, Madam Chair.
I made a unanimous motion on my own there, a little executive privilege. So thank you, Chief. Good. Now we're over to water. Thank you.
And before Mark starts the presentation for water, I just wanted to remind everybody that this is the first year with the consolidated budget after the approval of the merger by the legislature and the governor in Boston. So it does look a little bit different just with all the numbers in one spot, but I just want to remind everybody that that's the change that we made this year.
Thank you, Brian.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thank you. Unlike Steve, this won't be my last time. Congratulations to him. He will be missed. I'd also like to thank Brian and his team. They do a tremendous job for us. For people like me that look in the future and look like we need to do certain projects and purchase certain items, to come up with a budget and have the talent down there to bounce the information off of and get guidance is hugely important. Makes our job a little easier. So kudos to them. They do a great job and give us a lot of help. So for us, if we get to the goals, description and mission always stays the same. As you all know, there's some water main work happening now out at the airport. Obviously, that will be done, or I hope it's done. It should be done way before we get into this fiscal year. But we want to make sure that that's in complete. We're getting safe drinking water to the people of Matacasham Valley that really need it, and anybody else that was tested along that route by the airport. Also, to continue planning stages for possible main extensions into the area west of the airport, Orkawa, Lovers Lane area, all through there, Monahans, Webster. We're looking at that. To do that, we have to run some hydraulic models, so we're going to continue that work to find out if feasibly that's possible for our pumps to handle that pumpage. And the third goal is something that we've kind of stepped away from for the last 5 or 6 years with all this growth and everything, new services, new connections, is really looking at our groundwater investigation and getting back to knowing the science about the groundwater. We have never dreamed we'd be pumping these kind of numbers from the aquifer and seeing this type of growth over the last 5 years. So I think it's time to really get back and focus on the science behind it and define the rest of the island's aquifer, because it is a sole source aquifer underneath the whole island. We know a lot about our zone 1 and our zone 2. Would like to continue that to an island-wide groundwater model where we could look at everything for the entire island. Initiatives are to incorporate solar power. When we started this project, I never thought the difficulties involved with a green renewable energy project would be be what they are, but we are moving forward and hope to continue to push that forward. We're making some headway with PCR at the state level and some options for some mitigation land. And also to continue to develop a great working relationship with Dave over at Sewer. As you guys know, we've combined on a lot of the last capital projects. We'll be working together on the sewer force main extension and moving forward, try to stick together so we can cut costs when we do those projects. Obviously, priority is to keep all our employees safe, maintain our water quality with improved sampling and techniques. A lot of additional sampling is coming from the state of Massachusetts now and Mass DEP, including additional PFAS sampling and other contaminants of emerging concern. And to improve the water distribution system, which is probably going to include in the near future a new production well to add into our wells. As far as the budget goes, it's not a lot different than previous years. We have combined Sconset in there, so the revenue and their expenses have kind of rolled into one, as Brian said. The real difference in the revenues is the expected water use. You know, that the sales of water are going to increase. We've made approximately 100 new connections, so those connections will be in use for this. We are taking a guess at 77 new connections for this budget. Again, this year we did 100, looking out a year, year and a half, 2 years. Kind of thinking, I don't know if it's going to keep up this pace. So we reduced that number a little bit. Kind of controlling that now with some of the bigger projects going on like Old South Road. By that point in time, you know, in another year, that might be complete and those would not be involved. When one of those big buildings comes online, we automatically add, you know, 14 to 15 new services. So that might be complete by this time. Expenses, we kind of stayed the same. There are increases, as you've heard from others today. When we go out and have to repair a water main, you know, labor rates and construction rates and excavation rates across the island and across the country, I think, are raising. We had to adjust that budget line for that. So utilities, the power, electricity, electrical costs are rising for us. So with our fuel and our heating oil and propane for our generators, it's all going up. So there were increases made there. As far as exceptions, only capital that we're looking at will come out of retained earnings. We already have capital in place to take care of some of the bigger projects we have lined up with Dave. We thought it would be a good idea and a safe idea to maybe get a water service and a water line out to the Delta fields by the airport in that area. That is on a private well right now that feeds the restrooms there and the little concession stand. So there is a water main in Sun Island Road. We're gonna use some retained earnings money and go ahead and get a water service out there and maybe a hydrant. Better supply that with safe water. I'm not saying it's unsafe. We haven't tested that well. Instead of even taking a chance, we'll just get that out there and it'll be a non-issue. Again, there are my the operating additional expenses with electricity, propane, different utilities. Sampling is going to have to increase quite a bit. Lab fees are not quite doubling, but for some tests, like volatile organics and the PFAS testing, those are going up by like 35 to 40%. And I think that's going to continue. Labs are being inundated with all this work, and there are very few labs that can do that work. So until more labs come online and get the certifications to do that, they kind of got you over a barrel, and you got to pay whatever price they want you to pay. We did put in a little bit of money for some new vehicle and some building maintenance. Some of the pump stations are in need, especially after this last storm. Some roof shingles need to be replaced, some sidewall, and looking at a new vehicle under the new equipment line. Other than that, it stayed pretty good. We did have two people, Jeffrey Johnson and Chris Pikus, a combined 90 years experience and time here at Wannacomet retire this winter. Chris has already retired. Jeffrey will be in the end of February. So filling those positions is something we're going to take a look at as we roll into March. People will move up into those positions, and we will fill new employees at the bottom of the ladder and give them an opportunity, give current employees an opportunity to move up. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward, not much different than it was last year.
Thank you, Mark. And so this is Joe and Jill. You have the baton for starting off the questions. So it's up to Jill. You want to start?
I can. One question I had for you, Mark, and thanks for the presentation. It's really good. And it all looked really good for my end. On the hookups, like when you're doing west of the airport, maybe you could walk us through a little bit more about that. But when you're bringing the pipe down when you're bringing the main down, are the homeowners paying it all to tie in? Are some people choosing not to tie in? What's kind of going on with that?
So right now, anybody that connects, the airport is covering that connection cost.
Okay.
Working with them, and it's a reduced cost. It's just kind of paying the overhead of us buying the material. Unlike any of the other departments, we do the installation, we make the tap, we use the material, so we carry all that inventory. I have to buy that supply. So they're getting a reduced rate. The airport is covering for the current water main project. Any other future project, if we extend into areas where, if it's able to and the system can handle it, we would develop the system and to reach further west of the airport, Monahans area, maybe Orkawa and Webster, maybe the rest of Skyline. We'd have to look to see what the model tells us. And if we did that, working with the commission, we would probably come up with some type of payment option or some kind of smaller fee for people that are just looking to get better quality water and have the availability for them to hook up. Not mandatory. When we run a water main down a road, it is not mandatory like sewer to tie in. You can choose to or not choose to. Everybody where the main is going now, currently being installed, is tying in.
Right. Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. I see all the work that's going on. So I live nearby. Looks like I might be next on the list. And you really answered a lot of my questions, like the water testing. You said you've seen a lot more of that. And I assume you're seeing more of it with real estate sales as much as you are with people just concerned about the quality of their water. Is that right?
We are. I'm getting here at the office receiving a lot more phone calls than we used to get about private wells and what the sample results mean. Some people are getting these results from real estate agents or real estate attorneys, and they don't understand what the results mean, whether it's a PFAS or whether it's a coliform or whatever they're looking for. More and more people are kind of waking up to the idea of what's in their groundwater or what's not in their groundwater, and we're getting more and more requests to do sampling. So we don't do any private well sampling, but Mass DEP has a thing called the unregulated contaminant rule, and that is how we discovered PFAS in the first place back in 2010 and 13 when we first started looking for that. Wannacomet is involved with that program, so we are continually looking for new emerging contaminants in groundwater, and we're working with EPA to get that done. That's out of our pocket. That is an expense to us, but the commission and I both feel that that's an important thing to continue. And to do that, we need that extra money to keep that budget rolling.
Okay. That's it for me. Thank you, Mark, so much.
Thanks, Jill. Joe?
Great. Hi, Mark. First, just sort of a numbers question. The revenue budget or projected revenue for fiscal 23 versus 22. I don't know the exact numbers in front of me, but I think it was an $800,000 increase. How much of that, and I think you commented that it was largely increased water sales, but is it all water sales, or have water rates changed? Can
No,
you
we
break
haven't
down
changed
that
water.
increase for me a little bit?
Sure. So we haven't changed water rates since 2016, and I don't see any coming in the near future. But the increase in water sales, the connection fee, there's also, every time there's a fire service, there's a quarterly fee for that, and we're seeing more and more fire services to all the commercial buildings now, or they're required to have them. That's been probably one of our fastest growing. Besides the residential service connections, the fire service connections to commercial buildings has increased. And every time we install one of those, now we have to go down and inspect the cross-connection devices on an annual basis, and those fees are in there as well. And then the transfer fees, property transfer fees to change ownership forms, that's increased every year for the last 3 or 4 years. Those are the kind of the items that make up that difference.
Gotcha. Thank you. Then my last question is just, you mentioned that you had 2 experienced staff members retiring this year. Do you have concerns about recruitment? Where do you find people? Where do you find people with the right sort of skill set to support your business, to support the water company? And especially in relation to, what you read about housing costs, getting people, being able to retain people here on the island. Just what are your concerns?
It's not hard to find people, but what you said about the housing, it's to keep them here. Fortunately, here at Wanacomit, it seems like once people are in, they're in until the end. The people that are going to move up to take over those 2 vacancies and fill those upper level spots have been here for one's 15 years and the other 16. So filling in with new people, a lot like Chief Murphy said, we're going to look for homegrown applicants. Hopefully there's housing involved and they're already okay. If not, help them try to find some. But it is a concern because it is difficult to find the housing that's needed. Talking with our commission, we're looking at using some of our retained earnings to either purchase another home to go along with the 43 Pulpus that we already own, or maybe building another one out there on that property to take care of any of those needs as we move forward. Try to stay ahead of that housing curve if we can by either purchasing a duplex or building some type of duplex. How we would combat that.
So you already have staff that have employee housing provided by the water company?
Yeah, they will be moving in April.
Okay, great. Interesting. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions from the other committee members? I don't see anyone raising their hand. So Mark, thank you very much.
Very much.
Thanks for being here. Bye, Mark. Okay, Mr. Rafter, over to you.
Good evening. I'll go right to our goals. Goal number 1 is completing the construction of taxiway Echo. Contractors due back out next month, and this is the final phase of that project. We're also going to be decommissioning a runway 1230. We're going to continue with our PFAS work in accordance with the municipal contingency plan. Completing design of employee housing and crew quarters, as the topic was just discussed there too. Some additional goals: we have a terminal optimization study that we're going to be completing, as well as relocating taxiway Golf. There's some paving in the north ramp in the area of Hangar 8, which is a freight hangar. Continuing non-aeronautical revenue generation. We're developing some hangar sites. One is under construction. The other we're in the process of negotiating a lease. And we have a non-standard geometry study that we're looking to complete as well. On the initiatives and accomplishments from last year, we began fuel farm rehabilitation, completed the security project, and taxiway Echo, again, the majority of that was complete. We're also looking to implement new rates and charges. Our commission has approved them. We've coordinated with the airlines on that. And we're also working on new airline lease agreements. As I mentioned, continuing non-aeronautical development. And we're continuing our efforts to get an HVAC controls project completed, working with Brian and his crew, and they've been very helpful on that. Some of the 23 priorities, again, safety, security, quality, customer service, financial sustainability, public health, and improved air service. Be lucky, I think, to keep what we have in the air service development right now. Some significant changes, significant increase in activity with less staff, continued staffing availability challenges. The PFAS costs are a challenge. Some of the key issues, accommodating growth in both commercial and general aviation traffic. As of January, or through the end of January, our fuel sales numbers were up 40+% over last year, and last year was a record year. Ferry is continuing competition, but we've got enough to handle right now in the summer. Rates and charges I mentioned. Funding on a national level, it's a hit or miss type of game. Washington throws out a bunch of money one year and then none the next, and there's no stable, continuous funding source, if you will. And fuel capacity and supply chain issues continue to be a challenge. We are looking, though, at the possibility of converting one of our avgas tanks to a fuel, or to a Jet A tank as part of our fuel rehabilitation project. And the list of exceptions is essentially our capital projects, the housing, maintenance and equipment, some flooring at the TSA area, IT equipment. We need to have some servers to be replaced. Paint and beads and rubber removal. The state used to fund that, but now we've been doing that for the past few years. Our South Apron noise berm, the Airbus 220 gate hard stands. We've been informed by JetBlue that within the next couple of years, they're planning on bringing that aircraft in. I mentioned the gate 8 paving, permitting for a number of our ALP projects, commuter apron, continuing reconstruction of that, some terminal improvements. And again, we're doing the study now, but that will dictate or inform us a little more on what the actual cost of that may be. We may need to purchase another aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicle because of the type aircraft that JetBlue is looking to bring in. And again, the HVAC and a master plan update. When you look at our budget, I want to point out something. As you scroll down, you'll see in our salary and wages, back up a little bit, Maria, if you could. Thank you. In the airport payroll, it looks like there's a huge anomaly there. What's missing is a $2.1 million CARES Act grant. That's just shown in a different accounting way. So it's really not that crazy of an increase. And again, it's just an accounting thing in the way it's shown. We do have a significant increase in our professional services expense budget. The majority of that is related to service contracts that we're entering into to maintain some of these new systems we've put in, especially the security system, things like that, HVAC, and again, a lot of preventative maintenance type things. So again, the good news is we're still doing well. We got our retained earnings. They look pretty good. We haven't done any real debt service in a number of years, and we're hoping to try to keep it that way. So if you look, the budget's fairly consistent, but you can see some drops. And again, that's just because of an accounting situation where it may not show the grants that we received from CARES Act, CURSA Act, and all these other funds that are coming out of Washington. And going back to our capital projects in the terminal, we're trying to position ourselves to make sure we receive as much money as possible from Washington. We're scheduled, I believe, to get about $1.2 million a year for 5 years for terminal improvement. Sounds like a lot, but when you look at a terminal, it's not really that much. So that's where we're going to be studying to see how we can maximize that. Staffing, there's really no major changes. We're backfilling some positions. That's about, there's no new positions. And again, we're just like everyone else, we're hoping to backfill them. we keep backfilling from within, and luckily we have a bit of a career ladder where we can have entry-level folks and start them in different positions and work them up through the ranks. But it's becoming more and more challenging, and that's why we're also looking at the crew quarters housing. So any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. And on the airport, it's Stephen and George. So George, do you want to go first? Is George there or he's gone?
There he
George
is.
gone.
He's
Oh,
muted.
there's George. Okay, you popped off my screen, George. Okay. You need to unmute, George.
Don't waste all the good questions. Let's turn the mic on.
You're still muted, George. Maria, can you unmute George? Because
Here we are.
we are.
I'm wondering on some of the upgrades, especially the south ramp berm, what you anticipate the schedule to be. Is it off another 8 or 10 months after the season goes by, or is it in the middle of it or next winter?
It's probably beyond that. We have to go through a whole permitting exercise. We've got to get the environmental clearance, and it's associated with our South Apron project. So it's probably another 2 years out.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for a question.
Thank you, George. Stephen?
Well, I knew you'd touch on it, but I had written down anyway, the huge swings in the payroll. So thank you. CARES Act explains that. I was wondering why that name of the $2 million employee didn't show up on your roster, but now I get it. COVID. Yeah. So the presentation was very clear. We're not seeing any major changes on the expense or the revenue side, but I wonder how long you think things can remain steady. I mean, what are and maybe to put a finer point on the question, if you could highlight for us the one major opportunity and the one major threat that you think lies ahead of the airport.
The opportunity is in the fact that we are a very high-end leisure market. And so on one side of our business, we have, if you will, a lot of the homeowners and the larger homes and things. On the other side of our business, we have the folks who are coming in and renting, whether it be hotel rooms, Airbnb, et cetera, et cetera. So we capture both sides. And because of the nature of the beast and the economy, the way it's going, that's a very good opportunity. One of our biggest threats, and again, as my ex-boss used to say, you cut the rope closest to your neck when you can, but the law enforcement challenge is going to be a real issue for us if we can't get police out here. And that's going to have a significant impact across the entire island. So that's really our biggest concern today that we're dealing with right now.
And how does that manifest at the airport? Are you not able to accommodate flights if you don't have law enforcement there to oversee boarding and security?
If we don't, we're required by TSA to have a law enforcement officer present during all screening activities. We are trying to get a temporary waiver for an off-site response, which we think we might be able to obtain, but only until about May 1st. And after that, again, it comes down to threat levels and risk assessment and all that type of stuff. So we're working all different avenues to see what we can do what the alternatives may be.
Wow. That sounds like a major headache.
Yes, and the airlines are going to be very seriously concerned about that. They've been notified and they have serious concerns with it.
I bet. Okay, that's it for me, Denise.
Thank you, Stephen. Committee members, any further questions for Tom? Joe?
Tom, I'm not sure if it's a question for you or for Brian, but as I remember, and I didn't research this, but the airport sort of owes the town money that was contributed years back to sort of balance the books. And I think that your budget includes a sort of a reimbursement every year. Could you sort of update what the balance is and what the annual payment is?
Brian, I think I can start it. I believe our annual is 235,000. I don't recall off the top of my head what remains, Joe, but and I see our chairman's here too. I'm going to be recommending that we maybe try to knock that down quite a bit and advance some of those payments. Because of the condition we're in right now, that we might be able to do that. So
that would be good news.
I believe I think we have about 4 million still, if you will, roughly, that we have outstanding.
I think it might be a little bit less than that, but it is in that vicinity, Tom. And Joe, one of the things about that agreement is they budget the $235,000 payment every year. However, there's an offset if we use any material that they reclaim from any of the work that they're doing at the airport. The DPW can, or another town department can use it, and we do offset it. And I think in previous years, we certainly have taken advantage of that, which has meant we haven't had to go out and buy material at a really expensive rate for the town based on the way that agreement is. But the payment is budgeted at 235 with that potential for that offset if we do take advantage of it.
And we have plenty of that material. We're running out of space, so if DPW needs it,
it's a big pile.
We'll deliver it.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, Brian.
Bill?
Yeah, forgive me, Tom, for not understanding this better, but can you walk us through the payment? I guess, do you pay the town for the water hookups, the water replacement that's going on? Like, how does that show up in accounting? So when,
So, yeah, and I'm going to try to explain this. Brian may know better, but we will pay the water. Well, no, we have a contract with Robert B. Auer to do water main installation, and we have a number of other contracts for various types of connections and so on and so forth. I heard Mark say something, and I'm not sure it's 100% correct. We are paying for connections, but I believe it's for those whose wells tested above a certain amount or something. But we are making it available to all the other homes along the route. So,
the repayment that Joe asked about is nothing to do with the water connection. It's actually, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it dates all the way back to 2012.
Yeah, before that.
It has nothing to do with the current projects that the water company has, the airport has appropriations that they're funding those projects out of. The town has not contributed any money to those.
Yeah, I know I wasn't connecting those two. Sorry, I was asking just separately about the accounting of that, because it's not like you can look at the water company and say, oh, they have a revenue of $8 million, or do we know how much it's been costing and how much it's going to cost in the end?
For us?
Yes.
Our PFAS numbers right now are around 6 million. I think the water main was about 3 million of that. We are heading into, I believe it's called phase 2 of our MCP. And next week in our commission meeting, Tuesday night at 5 o'clock or 5:30, I believe it is. No, 5 o'clock. There will be an update on our PFAS program, where we stand. They've got a lot of results back with regard to identifying the plumes and so on and so forth, and water flows. And so there's a lot of good information will be coming out next week in our commission meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Bill, you all set? Thank you. Peter Schaefer?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. Tom, just one quick question. Do you have any idea of how many people commute to work every day by plane?
I don't, the numbers, I think right now it's just UPS and obviously Marine Home. I don't know if you're talking about commercial, but they're all, charter type aircraft or private.
Right.
So I know of UPS and Marine Home Center. Occasionally, if there's a big contract, They may charter an airplane. But we also have a lot of medical personnel that come in like once a month too on a charter.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Tom, I had a couple quick questions. You said that the fuel's been up 40%. Are you expecting it to continue to increase during the coming year? And what do you think the fuel revolver is going to be at?
Okay, very good question. I believe it will probably increase. And again, some of that is going to be tied directly to price. So our fuel revolver, we're going to request increasing the cap to $6 million. I believe at the current situation, we have it between the revolver and the operating about $9 million in fuel revenue. So, but again, some of that money is going towards the fuel farm, and we're going to need to fund some change orders that are coming up with, you know, some money out of that revolver as well, which is what it's there for. So.
Okay, that was my question. So, okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Jill?
Sorry, I did it one more. Tom, is every commercial space that you have available to leased out?
On aeronautical or non-aeronautical?
Non-aeronautical, just in the building.
We still have non-aeronautical land. In fact, we have some on Sun Island Road. But once we get the construction project Echo done, it'll free up some space. I think we might have one more spot on Bunker Road. So we've put these out a few times, some of them, and received no response. So, you know, we just try to be judicious with that.
Okay, thank you.
I actually did have one more question. Thank you, Jill. Anything else before I ask Tom? Of your capital projects, we're kind of out of sync this year with the Capcom reporting. Did all of your capital projects get approved and prioritized by a Capcom?
I believe so. And again, we're fortunate that the majority of our capital projects are 90% FAA, 5% state, and 5% airport. We were actually more fortunate during the COVID pandemic. We got 100% of taxiway Echo, which was a $20 million job. So, yeah, I believe all of ours were approved, and again, because we're self-funded somewhat. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything before I say thank you to Tom? No? Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
For being here.
Bye.
Okay, now Brian, we talked earlier about by a text that sewer won't be on tonight because we had a little bit of a disconnect on the date.
That's correct. So we will we'll look for a date that it fits in and isn't to add too much more to that date, Madam Chair, and we'll be prepared to let you know on Thursday what that date works the best.
Now, I have a procedural question, I guess, for Brian and for Libby. So let's say Capcom comes back, because we're seeing Capcom after, you know, the reporting after we go through our budget reviews now, and we find out that, in effect, they did not approve some of the things that are in the budget. So when we approve the capital article, that's when we have that discussion. Is that correct?
Remember, they're recommending, they're not approving.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. Good, thank you. And then do we have any committee reports? We do not. Okay, a date of next meeting is obviously Thursday at 4 o'clock. We have we'll be going through the school budget. We have several articles that we're looking at. It's all, wait a minute, I've got the agenda right here. Maria is doing a hero's job of keeping me on track on all of these, I'll tell you. We have Article 38, which is the appropriation for the shredder for solid waste. We have the school budget. We have Article 80, home rule petition, which is the Historic District Commission amending that to encourage adoption of solar. And then 81, the article amending the NP and EDC commissions charter, I guess is the intent of that article. Now, and then we have the finance operating budget. So I would expect Thursday to be a 2-hour meeting, folks. And then coming up on February 14th, 15th, we have the real estate and we have the planning board. And so as I sent all of you today, and I know you just all sit at your desks waiting for my emails, there are 23 items on the planning board. There's 23 items on real estate. So please send me any particular articles under those categories, right? Real estate, and it's on the little spreadsheet that you particularly want to highlight, because again, we're starting to run out of days. After today, we only have 10 more finance committee meetings, and we've approved 4 of the warrant articles. So there's 103 left to go. So it's, we have a March 8th deadline to be finished with all of this. And we may end up having meetings that are running longer than than normal. So just to give you a heads up. So if, for the 14th and 15th for real estate and the planning articles, if there's any that any of you want highlighted, please just let me know so we can be prepared and we can plan, particularly if we need to move those out to another day. So, and then on the 8th, on the 8th, we have all the ones that have some legal issues with them, or, that are either in incorrect format or need adjustment. So town council will be with us for those to go through those 7 articles and hopefully get them to the point where we can make a recommendation. Look at that, Joe, I got recommendation instead of motion for first time ever. There we go. So, yeah, good. So that's kind of a quick update on where we are and where we're going with this. Still have some heavy lifting, needless to say, left in February. Okay. Any comments, questions, because we're on other business, Jill?
Yeah, the thing, Capcom, I mean, this isn't really committee report, sorry, but we are meeting on Thursday. I think this will be our last meeting.
Okay.
But I don't have the list in front of me of everything that was approved and not, and there was still some debate. And to my knowledge, we have not approved the housing request that was made by the airport yet. That I suppose that could change on Thursday, but I don't think so, because you asked about his Capcom request.
Yeah.
So
because there's so I realized the airport.
That flagged me. I'm not positive, but it's not saying in front of me. There was some back and forth about it, but.
Yeah, and as Libby pointed out, it's a recommendation from Capcom as to where the spend should be. And so effectively you're saying that it may possibly not be one of the recommendations that Capcom thinks is in.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where it'll go on Thursday.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jill.
Denise,
Libby.
Something's occurring to me. Brian, do you recall this? I think IT has told us that they're going to have to shut down on Thursday at 6 because they have to do some maintenance from outages from the storm.
Okay.
And so
we'll finish
is
this
that this Thursday, Brian? You're muted.
You're muted, Brian.
You'd think I would remember to take mute off, unfortunately, after 2 years. Karen did mention something about 6 o'clock, and we did mention that we may be going, but hopefully we won't need too much off the server, but there is a possibility that we may not be able to access something if we go past 6 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Let's see how it goes. I mean, my view is, and committee members, please weigh in. If we've already had lengthy discussions on some of these topics, I think it's really, is there anything new? Is there any members of the public who didn't join before who'd like to offer some information? And otherwise, we go into our deliberations on our recommendations. So I don't think we need to start from the beginning on every single article if there are articles that we had already discussed previously. So because we did do quite a few discussions on several of the articles already, and so let's just see how it goes. So yes, I will emphasize to folks that if you have something new, please share, and if it's the same information as previously, then thank you. We heard you, we paid attention the first time. So that will be my encouragement to the participants. Libby will keep you awake, Libby. Come on. I know. I'm telling you, Finance
Tuesday.
Committee is riveting. So good. Anything else from anyone? Otherwise, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Peter,
aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jill,
Hi.
Chris,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Denise, I thank you as always. Maria, Brian, Libby, thank you very much. Greg, everyone, Rick, everyone who participates, you make this a very productive process.
Thanks all. See everybody Thursday.
See you
Thank
Thursday.
you all.
Thank you. Bye.